Hello and welcome to Comprehension Points Video Snark. If you came here because you thought that this was an audiobook, please stick around and maybe learn some reading and listening comprehension skills. I read books and discuss what went wrong and how they can possibly be fixed. I'm continuing my read through of Betrothed by Kiera Cass. Not the first video, go check out the others, links are posted below. Chapter 9. Hollis goes down to breakfast and is a little surprised that Ethan isn't there. Giovanna says that they'll take it easy today because they need to write some letters to inform people of what's been going on, if you catch my drift. I have excellent handwriting, I told her. It was the one thing in my academic career Delia Grace praised me for. Considering what little we saw of Hollis's academic career in the first book, I think that having good penmanship is literally the only thing worth praising. Giovanna goes on to say that a letter for Hollis arrived late last night. It looks like it has been forwarded from the bride estate in Kuroa, and it's from Nora back at Jameson's castle. She writes about how much she misses Hollis and wishes that she'd come back. I don't mean to take digs at Delia Grace. I think that we always knew she was ambitious, but the way she swarmed herself into the king's affections has me uncomfortable. She and I are still on speaking terms, and I have you to thank for that, but I worry how things will be if she's ever queen. Considering how terrible of a person and a king that Jameson is, I feel like Jameson and Delia are a match made by Satan himself. This is followed by Nora explaining how literally every single thing reminds Jameson of Hollis. He uses those little reminders to launch into long-winded Hollis used to eat berries kind of stories. Nora also begs Hollis to come back to the court. Although she wishes Hollis would push Delia out of the way, she's also hoping that Hollis comes, nothing happens between her and Jameson, and then Hollis leaves again. As a way to settle in everybody's mind that Hollis Jameson is now over and that they can move on. As Hollis refolds the letter, Ian complains that it was an empty letter. Hollis says that it confirms that the people of Kuroa are talking about the slaughter, but nobody in Isolate is. Then there's this long bit for half a page where Reed and Ian make plans for the rest of the day. The morning mail comes in and Ian is surprised that the letter he's given has a real seal. Chapter 10. The letter is an invitation for Hadron's wedding to that political princess. The others aren't happy about the entire thing, but Hollis sees the silver lining. She says that they've literally been invited to a palace, and what better place to find evidence of wrongdoing and convince people to decide with them to take Quentin down. Although I have to say, I kind of feel like it's one of those situations where if you live there and somehow still don't know, then it's willful ignorance. And also, people who have been behind Quentin because he's one of us, he fights for the people or whatever BS nonsense Quentin is spouting. Yes, this entire thing does read like a thin metaphor to mirror American politics. I'm not going to say anything about this unless the metaphor actually comes up again. I'm simply stating that this is how it feels like to me. Whitley asks what they'll need to do, to which Reed says that they'll need eyes and ears everywhere. Furthermore, they need to present a united front, that the family has gone through hell and somehow come out stronger. And I'm fine with that. What I'm not fine with is the book's poor attempt to fling Hollis and Ian together. To that end, he said, leaning forward and looking at me first, then Ian, you'll be escorting Hollis to every event. It couldn't have been more obvious if it tried. Reed basically tells the two of them, suck it up, buttercups. Hollis knows that he's right. That night, despite her exhaustion and lack of sleep from the night before, Hollis can't sleep. Scarlet comes in and Hollis expresses her anxiety over going to Quentin's castle, that nobody has any reason to trust her, especially not Quentin. Scarlet asks if Hollis wants to know the role that she's to play in this, and then says that she doesn't know, only that Hollis is obviously sent there for a reason. Scarlet then tells Hollis that although she's a trained swordswoman, she froze when the darkest nights came in. She says that every day more previously repressed memories are unearthed, of her father grabbing a sword, of Silas refusing to go, of Sullivan being cut down beside her. She says that she was too busy searching for her own mother and Hollis to care much about Lord and Lady Bride, that she'd watched as the knights tore down the tapestries as kindling for the fires they started. One night grabbed her and randomly decided that this one should be spared. She crawled out, passing by dead friends and family, where she hid in the bushes outside, not knowing why she'd been spared. And as she sat there alone in the bushes, she wondered what she was going to do if everybody else had been killed. Hollis reassures Scarlet that they'll make sure Quentin never hurts another person ever again, which prompts Scarlet to tell their sister that the world needs people like Hollis, because she simply makes her mind up and then she does it, ignoring the fact that Hollis is a social pariah and that she burned a lot of bridges when she left with Silas. Like, I'm all for chasing your dreams and getting away from toxic people, but in doing so in a reasonable and logical way, not this thoughtless way Hollis is fond of. Chapter 11. Hollis is annoyed that Reed was serious when he said that Eaton was to be around Hollis at all times. As the family goes to leave, Hollis and Eaton have to share a carriage. They have a weird bonding moment over both being motion sick when they sit facing backwards, which assures Hollis some. They read in awkward silence for a long time before Eaton finally asks what her parents were named. which I think is hilarious that the characters somehow have more personality after death than they ever did while alive. Anyway, her parents were Claudia and Nora Bright. Hollis has a moment where she remembers that her parents are dead now and the bright line has ended since she has no brothers, which only makes me think that has it literally been nothing but only children for generation after generation, no fifth cousins or anything? But it's more than simply her parents being dead and the bright line ending. It's about how the choices in Hollis's life led up to her parents being killed, which is the survivor's guilt talking. You didn't kill your parents, Quentin's mad obsession did. Eaton asks why Hollis's plans went awry with Jameson. She says nothing about how miserable and awful that Jameson was and only focuses on Silas, which part of me gets it, but it probably shouldn't be discounted how Jameson tying future children to Quentin was a huge reason why Hollis left. Hollis confesses she's afraid that she's going to forget what Silas looks like. Ian says he understands and lists off friends he's lost recently. He says that he's the last of his group of friends, and then goes on to say that he was angry at Silas for dragging somebody else into the political nightmare that they're all caught in. And I get that it's a terrible thing to want to drag somebody into a toxic situation, but he shouldn't be angry at Hollis simply for falling in love and wanting to be with Silas. Surely he wouldn't murder us at a wedding. Quentin literally murdered your husband and family at your wedding reception. Gah, I feel like I'm the only one who actually remembers that. Ian says he thinks that Quentin simply wants witnesses to this political event, if only for bragging rights. Hollis says that since he's her escort, she'll simply claim to be under the weather so that they can both get out of it. They get closer to the capital, where there are a lot of poor laborers moving around doing their jobs and such. The castle comes into view, and Ian remarks of how, when he was little, he used to think that it was such an enchanting place. Hollis says that no amount of money would ever make her consider getting into a position of power again, but she still loves the aesthetic of castles. The two of them talk about building their dream castle, but the time that they get out, Ian has a real smile on his face. Chapter 12. Ian and Hollis rejoin the rest of the family. Hollis is nervous when Reed says that they're to go and greet Quentin, but Ian reassures her that she won't be alone. As they walk through the halls to the throne room, people stare and whisper about Hollis's presence there. Hollis feels like she's walking into a prison. They go in to meet Quentin. At the throne, Hollis and Valentina share a smile. Well, I'd heard that Jameson had lost his bride. They weren't even engaged. I wish that people would stop saying nonsense like this. It's getting on my nerves. Hollis then has to spell it for Quentin like he's 5 about how he literally had Silas and everybody else murdered. Quentin, for his part, does an entire surprise Pikachu face. Hollis doesn't buy it. However, Quentin is the only one who isn't surprised. The rest of the court seems insanely upset to hear about the news, which strikes Hollis as odd considering how fast the news spread of the slaughter in Kuroa. However, Quentin dismisses the family like they're boring him. He sends them to the Northcott quarters, although he openly mocks Whitley for having given up her own, but tells them that with the reduced numbers of their pottery, the Northcott quarters should do perfectly. Once out of the room, Whitley bursts into tears over how Quentin had called her widow Eastoff, which, even though it's technically the thing that happened, obviously having the man who ordered the slaughter of most of your family calling you such is too much. A random man comes up to ask Whitley if it's true, if her family is dead. She agrees, and the man turns to ask Hollis if she's really Silas's widow, if she was really on the arm of King Jameson. When she agrees, he says that he wants to hear their stories and welcomes her to Isolate. Thanks for listening to my book Snark on YouTube. New videos are up every Monday, but stick around because I sometimes drop random videos on other days too. Just as a reminder, even if you can't financially support me, there are other ways to help me out. The first is watching this video as well as all my other videos. It's also important to like and subscribe. Finally, you can share this video with all of your friends so that they can help as well. If you're already caught up with all of my videos, you can go to Tumblr for my main book. Snark's always free and updated every morning. And if you've already read all of my main Snarks, then you can find even more Snark on my Patreon. You can access it for $1 a month. Members also get early access to my main Tumblr Snark. Special thanks to Dawn, Phoebe, and Nikki for supporting me on Patreon already. If you want to hear your name in my video next week, you either support me on Patreon or make a one-time donation. Do you like my Snarks so much that you want me to snark your writing? I do that too. For just $6 per chapter, I will tell you how awful that your writing is. But not to worry if you feel like you couldn't take the criticism. I also offer regular book editing as well, just 1 cent per word. You can contact me on any of my social media platforms if you have further questions. If you want to read some of the things that I've written, you can purchase my works on Amazon. I have a slew of erotic short stories and 2 full-length novels. I also frequently run flash sales on my stories, and if you aren't following me on any social media, you might want to do so just so you can know when I might be offering things for free. Links for everything will be posted below. See you next week, guys. They go in to meet Quentin. At the throne, Hollis and Valentina share a smile. Naughty.